The Riviera of the Middle East. Is that your next big investment? It's a big question. If you like the news, we got some this week. I'm Jenna, and this is Smarter News. One word that we often use in media is range. If you have range, that means you can talk about Barbie dolls and you can talk about terrorism. And you know what you and me have? We have range because we're going to exercise it today. We have a variety of different headlines to cover, and we're going to cover them quickly. The president hosted the first foreign leader of his second term on Tuesday, Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel. And this matters because the first leader to visit the White House is a sign of a close relationship. And although the U.S. and Israel have long been allies, our relationship looks different depending on the administration. During this press conference, the president said this.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it.
So that was unexpected. The president mentioned the Palestinians living in Gaza could be moved to nearby countries. Obviously, he received many questions about that plan. Here's one of his answers.
You have to learn from history. History is, just can't let it keep repeating itself. We have an opportunity to do something that could be phenomenal. And I don't want to be cute. I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be so bad. This could be so magnificent. But more importantly than that is the people that have been absolutely destroyed that live there now can live in peace in a much better situation because they're living in hell. And those people will now be able to live in peace.
So where does the plan stand? How does it work? We don't really have a lot of specifics. Why does this matter? Let's zoom way out. And here I'm going to add a disclaimer. There's a lot of history, a lot of nuance, a lot of opinions about this part of the world. Here's just a few basics. An estimated 2 million people live in Gaza, an area of land that's about the equivalent of the area of Las Vegas, except it has a much higher population, 3 times the population of Vegas. Hamas runs Gaza, and the U.S. has designated Hamas a foreign terrorist organization, although others will refer to it as a militant group. We're going to refer to it as a terrorist group. Hamas crossed the border of Gaza into Israel in October of 2023 and launched a terror attack that was the latest catalyst to an all-out war. Although there's been many conflicts over the years in this part of the world, it is a fact that Israel has bombed Gaza extensively, including residential areas, and been criticized for that. Israel argues Hamas is intertwined with the people living and operating amongst them and has an elaborate tunnel structure under the city. Now Gaza is basically decimated, and very basic needs are not being met, although even before the war, basic needs were also lacking. And the question is, with a completely destroyed area of land and millions of people, what do you do? Do you let Hamas lead to restructure and rebuild? How do you prevent history from repeating? What do you do with all of these people? And that's one of the questions we sit with today. Some suggest, including one of my favorite foreign policy analysts, Mark Dubowitz of the Foundation of Defensive Democracies, that's a nonpartisan think tank in Washington, D.C., he's suggesting that President Trump made this announcement as an opening salvo to other countries to get involved, like a challenge to nations like Jordan or Egypt or Saudi Arabia to become part of a solution. So that's something to consider here. Perhaps one of the most important things that President Trump said during this press briefing or press conference was not about Gaza. And it's not getting a lot of attention, but it's his comments about Iran, a country that the United States believes has funded and supported terrorist groups for decades, including Hamas, that I think is really important for you to hear. President Trump says he wants to work with Iran to find a different path forward.
I want Iran to be peaceful and successful. I say this, and I say this to Iran, who's listening very intently. I would love to be able to make a great deal, a deal where you can get on with your lives and you'll do wonderfully. You'll do wonderfully. And I really want to see peace, and I hope that we're able to do that. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. I'm not putting restrictions. They cannot have one thing. They cannot have a nuclear weapon.
If Iran did get a nuclear weapon and provided that to a terrorist group, we would wake up in a completely different world. If sustainable peace could be negotiated, who knows the upside? So we're going to keep an eye on this space because the stakes are very high. A few other housekeeping items. President Trump's nominees for Secretary of Health and Human Services and Director of National Intelligence, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, respectively, will now go before the Senate for the final vote on their quest to confirm their nomination. They won the support of their colleagues in a smaller committee that enabled this. And at the time of this recording, we don't have a final vote, a date or time of a final vote, but that is going to be the final step in this process. There's still some unknown about whether or not they have the support they need to be confirmed, but it appears that Republicans are slowly coalescing around them. So we'll watch that. In the meantime, Secretary of State Marco Rubio was in Central America this week, and he had this to say about the state of U.S. foreign aid.
I have long supported foreign aid. I continue to support foreign aid, but foreign aid is not charity. It exists for the purpose of advancing the national interest of the United States. Every dollar we will spend, as long as I'm Secretary of State, and as long as President Trump is in the White House, is going to be a dollar that's advancing our national interest.
The story about the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, finding fraud at USAID continues to be a big story. Remember, that's the agency that distributes humanitarian aid from the United States around the world. Right now, the organization was put under the umbrella of Secretary Rubio while this audit is taking place. And I just talked to our friend Holly McKay, who has looked through some of the spending records of USAID. She's going to be joining us to talk about what she uncovered. It is fascinating, so stand by for more on that. Let's talk a little bit about tariffs. The U.S. paused tariffs against Mexico and Canada before they went into effect this week, but not against China. China retaliated with some limited tariffs of their own, but there's still some impact potentially. Mattel, a U.S. toy company I'm sure you're familiar with that makes Barbies and Hot Wheels, said that there's the potential that the tariffs may force them to raise prices because 40% of their toys are made in China. So we'll watch that. An interesting side story this week, and we don't know if it's connected or how it's connected to the tariffs. The U.S. Postal Service suddenly announced it would not take packages from China. And this would really hurt some of China's companies like retailers that utilize the Postal Service. Then the Postal Service quickly reversed course in a few hours. So what to make of this, I'm not sure. But it feels like something's going on behind the scenes, and it's just a heads up of the potential disruption that could happen in some cases. A story many of you have asked about is regarding the Department of Education, because there's some reporting because of what President Trump has said in the past and what he has said recently about winding down that department. And the White House confirmed that this week, that he's, considering this. There is a question about how much the executive branch can unilaterally impact departments or agencies that are created or confirmed by Congress. USAID is one of those agencies. The Department of Education is one of those departments. Nothing prohibits lawmakers or the president from asking questions or doing research or suggesting a different path. There's just a question about end result, and I think it's important for you to know that. A historic fact that I found really interesting, the Department of Education as a cabinet level department dates back only to 1980, but its very first iteration dates back to 1867. And it has taken a lot of different forms. So we're going to get into that more at the right time. Range. We did it. We covered a lot. Thank you for your belief in quick, concise, nonpartisan news. I'm Jenna. Have a great day.